Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on just some stuff that revolves strictly around DC TV in regards to the things we're going to be focusing on. So as we all know, there has just been a lot of change going on when it comes to both the Warner Brothers and the CW side of things over the past 6 to 8 months or so, which can lead to relationships being broken or just futures being left in a bit of a like an uncertain manner, like you don't know where things are going exactly. And over the past, I want to say month or so, there has been talks around Greg Berlanti, the head of the Arrowverse, and most of what the CW puts on its network for people to watch over the past decade or so, and even at the moment. Now, it came out, I think, about a month or so ago, maybe a bit less, that he was in talks to renew his deal with Warner Brothers, specifically Warner Brothers TV, but there was interest from other places like Netflix and stuff like that. Now, staying with Warner Brothers seemed like the logical option. It's such a big studio, but it depended on what he personally thought would be the best for him. Now, the Green Lantern HBO Max show, which Berlanti is heading up, was one of the projects that people thought could be, maybe a deciding factor in how that deal goes down, because it was said to be the biggest thing in regards to an individual project that Berlanti had ever done. But if Warner Brothers was planning on passing on it after a few changes to it, as we know, it was a group show, Green Lantern Corps, now it's just a John Stewart show, those are the changes to it, then maybe, if it's not, furthered, if you want to call it, then maybe that could be a factor in Berlanti leaving. Well, we now have an update on not only what Berlanti chose to do, but also whether DC will play a part in his future potentially. So this news came out earlier in the week, maybe like 3 days ago, maybe from when you've seen this video, maybe 4, not sure how long ago, as I'm not sure when this video will upload specifically, but this is what Deadline reported when this news broke. Greg Berlanti believes in the traditional studio model, so much so that it's the focal point of his new overall deal with Warner Brothers Television. The prolific producer, who holds the record for the most scripted originals on the air or in the works at the same time, signed a new 4-year overall deal with his longtime home at WBTV that will see him rewarded in step with the studio. The new agreement, which begins in 2024 after his current pact expires, will see Berlanti and the studio be compensated for the success of the shows he delivers rather than his record output. Berlanti is currently in the last 2 years of the 4-year extension he signed with WBTV back in June 2018. Under that $400 million deal, Warner Brothers bought out the back end on Berlanti's DC Comics shows that were produced for the CW, Arrow, The Flash, etc., as the WME negotiated deal also included bonuses for the number of shows the super producer delivered for the studio. So with this, obviously, it's a big deal going forward with this quote-unquote mega deal, as many people are putting it, and maybe even Warner Brothers put it that way themselves with the press, announcement and stuff like that. But there is a big note, if you want to call it that, is included with this that really highlights the change with Greg Berlanti, and how we've known him before. Before he was known as like that Arrowverse dude, with a lot of other TV shows as well, but really heading up that DC stuff on TV, which led to a lot of people thinking that maybe he could even lead the DC Studios thing, which now James Gunn is in, even though, as we said, that would have been a downgrade in his career, which isn't an offense to the role, just because he had so much stuff attached to him. It would have been a downgrade. But in regards to this big note, in regards to what's happening in the future, this is what Deadline then went on to say in that article. Sources close to the showrunner note that Berlanti is increasingly focused on delivering fare like HBO Max's The Flight Attendant, which broke through with a dozen Emmy nominations, and Netflix's You, which continues to rack up big viewing figures at the streamer after failing to find an audience on Lifetime. Sources also note that while Berlanti helped launch the wave of comic book TV series with DC hits including Arrow and Superman Lois, DC Comics fare will not be the focal point of his deal with Warner Brothers. Now, 4 or 5 years ago, that's a completely different thing. Now we're saying that DC is not the core of his deal, which it was in the past. Now, this means, you might be wondering, does this mean there is no DC in his future? Well, no, that's not what this is saying. But it's just not what the deal was signed for and why they went so hard to keep Berlanti on. They're not, they didn't go out of the way to sign him again to this big deal just to go, okay, well, we signed you because of the DC stuff. Now, as we know, it wouldn't be that big of a thing for Berlanti anyway, because in the past, when he signed that other deal, there were 6 or something DC shows that he was attached to that were in production or airing, that were a part of his catalog, with even more in development. I think that was before DC Universe launched, might I say, which of course had even more opportunities to add to his catalog, where he was attached to all of the shows on there, like live action wise, except for one, which was Swamp Thing, which was the show that was cancelled, the first one. So, one of the things that was sort of like a big thing with the CW even is that if you're a Berlanti show, you had a much stronger case to be renewed with the CW if you were something else, just because of the good relationship there. And I think that even stretched over into DC Universe because Swamp Thing was like James Wan's production company and stuff like that, not affiliated with Berlanti at all. But of course, now it's not the climate like it was back then, like 4 or 5 years ago, or whatever it was, when he signed that other deal, where DC was such a core part of him. Since that point, he has progressed into other stuff where, and like with the DC stuff, other people are handling it, even though it's got his name on it. Now, obviously, with the DC stuff and stepping back on it, maybe not completely, but just not being the core, people have wondered, like, is the James Gunn deal, not James Gunn specifically, but the deal with James Gunn and DC Studios, the reason for, DC not being a core with Berlanti? You'd have to say yes, because, Gunn's, I guess, wants to make like a universe that's all somewhat connected, or at least he's the one that's overlooking it all. But that doesn't mean that Berlanti couldn't play a part in some of the TV stuff that Gunn has planned. Like, Gunn might be like, okay, well, I need some consistent show running and stuff like that, so I might go out to Berlanti, but I'd be surprised if that happened. I think it just depends what's on Berlanti's plate, but it would be a surprise, I think, if that played out. But it also wouldn't surprise me if Gunn had been in a meeting with Berlanti, or been in a meeting that Berlanti was also in. So it wasn't specifically a James Gunn, Greg Berlanti meeting, but it was like a meeting with like David Zaslav, for example, and those two were there and maybe they shared thoughts, maybe specifically on DC or something along those lines. So this whole thing with Berlanti and whether he's involved with DC stuff going into the future, that's a thing to wait probably until next year when this deal, kicks off into this new period that he's in. And also when I guess there's other DC stuff to deal with. But obviously Green Lantern is the thing that people are curious about now after this announcement. Does that mean it's dead? Does that mean it's even more alive than it ever was? Because Berlanti signed this deal because, people thought it could have been a deciding factor. Like, if it gets, canned and they're not going to do anything with it, then Berlanti might go elsewhere. So does him signing on give it some confidence that it's going to stay around? Once again, that's a wait and see. We haven't got any more updates since like the one a few months ago where they announced that it was changing from a Green Lantern core show into a John Stewart show. So we're still going to be waiting on that. The longer you wait for this show, I think the less likely it's going to happen, but you never know. It could still pull out a miracle and still be made. But of course, we know The Flash is ending this season. It's somewhere in June, maybe end of May. That's when the last episode will air. So that's not a worry for Berlanti. He knows that he's got 9 seasons out of the show and done an incredible job there to get it to 9 seasons. So he's happy with that. But there is a show on the moment that's currently heading into its 3rd season that people are wondering about, and that's Superman and Lois. So does this deal that Berlanti has made with WBTV, does it help Superman and Lois' safety? Now, as if you had to give me like a yes or no, if I had to give a yes or no answer, I'd probably say no, because that might not overly help the safety and say, okay, it's sweet, it's certain to get a season 4 now, but it definitely would not hurt it. This would not hurt at all. It helps more than it would hurt. Now, Nexstar, it's very important to remember, owns majority share of the CW, where of course Superman and Lois airs, with Warner Brothers only owning a minority share of 12.5%. Not an even 50% split alongside Paramount like they used to before Nexstar bought the majority. So obviously Warner Brothers can't decide things, but Berlanti's deal is not just for HBO Max, it's for that, Netflix and other streamers, cable channels, and network TV, where the CW falls into. So the CW would still not want to segregate itself from content producers like Berlanti, who is well known for creating very popular stuff on the cheap, which is exactly what the CW is looking for now. Now, of course, the CW still needs a solid spine of shows to build its network on, like a Superman and Lois or Walker and other things like that. And then you can build around that with all these random international shows they're acquiring. But the entire network can't be that because, let's be honest, no one's going to tune in. No one's going to tune in consistently for that. The ratings would be like a fifth, if not lower than what they are now for time slots because of that. Like, you have to have some form of original content, and it wouldn't surprise me too much if like they rely on someone like a Berlanti who can make consistently decent content that people will tune in for on the cheap. But as I said, the big thing or the big show around this announcement that I think people are curious about is the Green Lantern stuff. Hopefully we get an update sometime soon. I mean, hopefully you get it like before March or end of April or something like that, because as I said, the longer it goes on without any sort of update in regards to what the hell is happening with that show, the more you think, and I guess the more people start to think that nothing's really happening here. So fingers crossed we find out something soon. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions on this stuff. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.